Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind Body broadcast with Austin and Marty. And today we have pretty good topic idea from one of our listeners. I think she's given us a couple ideas.
Sure
So
has.
thank you, Paula.
Hmm.
Give you a little shout out there.
Yeah, for sure.
We're just going to call this one "What's in Your Gym Bag" because I don't, and I don't know off the top of my head if this has ever really been like an actual podcast devoted to this topic, but we're just going to talk about different gym equipment, belts, wraps, straps, shoes, all that good stuff, kind of where it fits in, what merit it has, and then where it might be overused. We were kind of joking before the show that you get the people that they have $5,000 worth of stuff in their gym bag, dragging it around, but they train. They don't have any training intensity, and
they train suboptimally. Let's go with that.
Right. Right. And I believe it was Louis Simmons that had that quote, something about the $100 shoes and the 50-cent squat, which now it could have been somebody else, but I mean, hell, now the shoes are well over. You're not even going to get a pair of squat shoes for a raised heel shoe for $100.
Yeah, maybe like a 5-year-old used pair, maybe. Yeah.
So now we've got $300 shoes with the 50-cent squat.
With the 50-cent squat, yeah. We'll say 60 cents with inflation, but that's maximum 60-cent squat.
Either way, we're really splitting hairs.
Yeah, but it is like those shoes like that. Like, you know what? Forget. Let's start out with the shoes and the proper foot attire. I will say flat out that I have had at one point at least 3 different pairs of shoes. So I was that guy at one point. So what were my 3 pairs of shoes? I really took a liking to Otomix, which are the pretty much, well, you know what? I should go into that too. There are fairly different forms of Otomix. Like there was the Stingray, which is the one that I like. That's like the half boxing shoe. I remember way back in the day, I used to see pictures of the dudes. I just remember especially Lee Priest had one at one point. They almost went up as high as boxing shoes, up to your knees type of thing. At least covered most of the calf. But then now, I don't think they're even called high tops anymore. I think they're called half tops or mid tops or something like that. But yeah, that's the Stingray. That's the one that I like the most. I don't. There's not a lot of ankle support or whatever. You can tie them fairly tight around your ankles if you like, but they are more of like a flat shoe, and that's how I always felt the best, especially on anything where your feet really determine the lift type of thing. What I mean by that would be your squats, would be your deadlift, would be your leg press, something that you're not seated or you actually have the weight on your legs per se, right? So I'd have those for my main lifts, and then at one point, because I've got extremely long femurs, my legs are way longer than my torso. So for things like squats, I did have those heel raise shoes. I don't think it was quite a full inch. The ones that I had were the Nike Romaleos 2 were the ones that I had. I think it was a 5/8 of an inch lift, and that saved me. That's the best shoe for me. I know there are some other ones like I think the Adistar by Adidas. I think that was one of them at one point, the weightlifting shoe. That one was been touted for years. I think that was the one that they officially used at the Olympics. I think because they only put out a new version of that shoe every 4 years or so, and that's why, because they would time it with the Olympics and have some time to reformulate it and reformat it if it was better or not. But what that would effectively do was it would be able to push it so that was not able to bend over as much at my torso, so my squat didn't look like a glorified good morning. So especially once I got up to stronger weight in it and whatever, like, I got up to 2.5, 3 plates, 3.5 plates, 4 plates for me, which was a fantastic squat for a guy with just trying to do, we'll say, bodybuilding, because my inseam is 38 inches and I'm just not quite 6'1", but yeah. So like when I would go in to get to any kind of custom made suit, I would always think, geez, like I would have to get usually the absolute longest. Let's put it this way: I'd never need anything hemmed ever. Like I just would be the natural length of the pant. I'd be like, great. Oh, like, oh, cool. Do you want that hemmed? I'm like, trust me, I will not need this hemmed at all. If anything, I'll need it to order like a custom length or something at one of the suit shops whenever I'd have to go to a wedding or to like a prom or something like that. So that would really, really help me out. Now the average person, like you also have to understand too, like this is going to be such a great topic. I'm fired up about this already. Is because it will actively change the musculature that you use during the lifts too, because it will, especially, let's keep going with the shoes, that your hips won't be as far back, they'll be more under the bar, So like you will be using it definitely felt it more in my quads when I wear those shoes. I'm not feeling it too much in my glutes or my hamstrings versus a flat shoe versus we'll call it the raised heel lifting shoe. So like, yeah. And so first, like, are those needed? Well, that would depend upon your structure, but it's also, I'm pretty sure I paid, I think I was telling you before we started here, about $220, $230 Canadian, shipped, bought, and whatever to my door off of, I'm pretty sure I got them off eBay. They were new, but they were all, cause I didn't think at this time there were any sites available that would ship to Canada, but I found someone that had them, like a secondhand store, or sorry, not a secondhand store, like an eBay store that had them in the US, and they did ship them to me, something like that. So, but yeah, that definitely helped me. But it's one of those, is that necessary? No, I would say no, but I would say if you are impeded some way, somehow on your squat by your biomechanics, by your levers, sure. Especially if you are wanting to do these lifts, sure. But if you're talking about any kind of competitive powerlifting and things, I don't believe they allow you to use those heel raise shoes. Do you know more about that than me?
Yeah, only Olympic lifting.
Only Olympic lifting, right? Yeah, because that's where I should clarify that only when you're doing the Olympic lifts, which would be like the snatch and things like that. That's when you are allowed to use them. But I'm pretty sure, powerlifting meets or just strongman meets, I'm almost certain that's not allowed. So, but the gym, sure. And then my third pair of shoes would be some form of runner. I really like the Nike Free, which was more or less along the lines of a barefoot. I think there was the Nike Free 3.0, 5.0, and 7.0, which either made it less of a barefoot or more of a barefoot effect. And because as soon as I was on the treadmill, even walking with the Otomix, with the flatter shoe, it just wasn't as comfy for me because it wasn't putting my foot in kind of, we'll say, a running position. So I remember wondering about that too, if anyone was wondering. So why a flat shoe versus like a runner? Like runners to me still are one of the, especially if it's a classic runner where it has something called a rocker, which is where at the front of your runner, it should be, the toe should be turned up. It should be looking, and it's more to put the pressure on the balls of your feet versus the heels of your feet. Because when you are walking, you really shouldn't be striking, especially running. Sorry, not necessarily walking, but when you are running or you're going at a better pace, you shouldn't be landing with your heel first. It should be more on the balls of your feet. Take a look at any kind of sprint or any kind of runner or type of thing. That's how they do. Your body is now shifted a little bit more forward, and you're on the balls of your feet, and that's. The way that I like to give the analogy to people is, imagine if you were to bench press or you were to put the dumbbells more towards your fingers as opposed towards the butt or the heel of your hand when you're pushing. You're going to cause a lot of wrist inflammation and tension that you just don't want, and giving yourself a lot of terrible grief there. So that's exactly what you're doing if you push, let's say, the leg press through the balls of your feet or your toes. You're creating so much ankle and knee torsion that you shouldn't be having. So that's what's kind of taking these out. And I've said that to countless people over the years. They're like, my knees are hurting on my squat or my leg press. And I'll say, what kind of shoes you're wearing? And they'll either send a photo or they'll tell me what shoe they're wearing. I'll look it up, and it's probably got a pretty hard rocker. And all you need to say to people is say, okay, what are you wearing when you're lifting weights? And they say a runner. I'm like, okay, well, I don't wear cleats on the dance floor because I'm not running when I'm lifting weights. So why am I wearing a runner? And they go, holy shit. Because I remember, I forget it was, I have it right beside me, funny enough. It's called Anatomy Without a Scalpel by a gentleman named Lon Kilgore. And it was really, I love that book. It came out years ago. But it would show, excuse me, it would show someone with the bar path going down squatting in a runner, which had that really firm or hard rocker, versus someone in a flat shoe. And the bar path you would oscillate because it would be trying to push you towards your toes, and it would just, the bar path would rock, and that's creating direct like pressure or oscillation on the front of your knees and your patellar tendon there. Versus a flat shoe, you're stable, you're flat on the ground, so you're not going to get that bar path traveling or wobbling back and forth. So that's kind of another benefit to having that too. But that was when I was at my nut baggiest, we'll call it, when I had 3 pairs of shoes. I would usually have at that point, I think I either had the treadmill or a recumbent bike at my place. And so I just would have my runners there, and I'd bring to the gym. If I was squatting or deadlifting, I would bring those Nike Romaleos, those heel wedge shoes. And then the rest of the time I wear my Otomix. So that's my start on shoes. What's your feeling on weightlifting feet attire?
Well, I think you could probably add to the bit about the heel raise, because I think that's probably the biggest thing. That's at least the most common one that I hear people ask about.
Yep.
Is there are a couple other little things to consider. Now they make the wedges, the squat wedges that you can just
That's right.
have it. A lot of people use those because you can kind of adjust, like, how far back are you on the squat wedge? So that would determine how high your heel's raised.
Sure.
So that's an option that gives you, like, I guess you could say that gives you a little bit of variability. So you don't need like 4 different pairs of shoes if you wanted to raise your heel different heights. And then the other would just be, just make sure that you're not using the shoe simply because your ankle mobility is terrible.
Yeah.
That's the other one. Is sometimes not just sometimes. I mean, I would say a lot of the time people just have really poor mobility too, and they, potentially just try to fix that issue. And you can assess that. You can assess that in different ways. You can look at yourself on, I don't know, like a leg press, for example, or even just a squat or anything that you're going down and your ankle's bending. Is your heel lifting because you just don't have any ankle mobility?
Yep.
And if that's the case, then I would probably try to address that issue. And that's not to say that you may not benefit from the heel raised shoe, but you're also correcting something else. Correct the root of the problem there. So yeah. And then, like you said, it also depends on your bone structure. I have short femurs. So like the way I squat, like squats feel I can squat with, and I have good ankle mobility. So like I can squat in whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. I don't really feel any different with the heel raised. I don't have any problems with that. But yeah, those would just be a couple little things I would want to add to it. Sure. And then you mentioned the runners already. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add there. I know flat, you obviously any type of deadlifting movement, any type of stationary movement like that, you normally want a flat, harder surface, just for stability and driving off the floor. I kind of cringe when people have like you definitely don't want like a really gushy gel sole when you're trying to move around hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Mm-hmm. That's a no-no. So don't do that. But outside of that, I think you pretty much covered the footwear pretty well. I mean, there's a lot of, like I said, there are so many options now. For the heel.
Now there are.
Yep. There's so many options for the minimalistic. If you're looking for just an all-around weightlifting shoe where you like the minimal feel, you have all the different toe shoes. There's so many different options. But just for general, like if you're doing chest or you're doing delts or you're doing back or something and you're not squatting, you're not deadlifting, find something that's stable and comfortable. I mean, you don't have to. I personally think it's completely unnecessary to spend tons and tons of money on a shoe for training those muscle groups. I just don't see. I just think it's just mental masturbation at that point. Like I laugh because like I have a pair of flat shoes that I'll use for I don't even think of what they are. They're like the Adidas, like the Sambas, I think, which are like a
that's a shoe.
And those are they're not even expensive. They're just cheap and they were free. My father-in-law gave them to me, but they're hard and they're flat, and I'll do like my rack pulls and shit in those. And then for my squats, I have a pair that has a nice steady sole on them too. But like just for the general everything else, I literally have a pair of tennis shoes that I have the soles glued onto because they're falling off. And I just wear it doesn't matter because I'm just carrying dumbbells over to the fucking bench.
Exactly.
Like it doesn't make any difference. So my point is that's fine if you want to spend money on that, but at the same time, don't feel that you have to. There are a lot of other accessories, and we'll cover some other accessories that will probably benefit you a little bit more.
Yeah, sure.
So what are some other, okay, so let's go into just some of the heavy hitters. Okay. So let's talk about using straps when you lift, or VersaGrips, or, any
Sure.
variety.
And I would make a pretty big distinction right off the hop is the difference between straps and wraps, because unfortunately I've seen quite a bit of confusion with that, where so I'll say, straps, and now I don't say this anymore, or either that or I will send a photo of VersaGrips. Like I'm a pretty big VersaGrip component ever since I bought my first pair. Holy crap, 2009 or so. Like, I'm not saying that's when they were. I know they were out before that, but that's how long I've been wearing them myself. So at least 10 years. Just I find that they're better. I find that it's a brand name of they're probably by far the most expensive out of them, but they're the fanciest strap you can get. So that straps are something that will hang around your carpals, not your wrists, your carpals. Which is a little bit lower on the wrist there, because if you hold it, if you tie up your strap, which is either the classic strap that you just kind of loop the band of fabric around and you tie it over your hand, or if you are wearing VersaGrips or anything, you don't want them to be cutting off the circulation to your frigging hand. Okay, you want them a tiny bit lower than your wrist, because I've seen people put them on their wrists and like it just impedes where your bones slide into your hand and just everything else. So it's a little bit lower than right at where your wrist is. So. And it's to obviously alleviate the amount that your forearms are pulling, and you're allowed to pull more with your back, and that's the whole point, is so your grip doesn't tire out. Whereas wraps are where you are putting them on top of your wrist to make your wrist be more straight. Because I actually was wearing one for a wrap for quite some time. I still do, especially on my heavier stuff. I will wear it because my wrist was stepped on. My left hand was stepped on when I was playing football in high school, and now permanently my left hand can bend back further. So once I get up to heavier weights, whether it's a barbell or a dumbbell, it's way worse with a dumbbell, is that it will roll prematurely towards my fingers versus keeping on like where you should be having it, which is more towards the butt of your hand there, like where the meat of your palm is. So I would wear those too, but then obviously there's no benefit to forearms strength or alleviation, we'll say, during a pulling movement if you're going to have a wrap, because it's not giving any kind of assisted grip. But yes, I have had people when I've said go buy straps, and then before you know it they're buying wraps. So just to clarify that first, but I'll let you take it away with your thoughts and feelings on straps.
Yeah, cool. So I have VersaGrips and I love them. I don't think I would probably use anything else, honestly.
No, me neither.
I think it's just ridiculous when they kind of joke about others wearing straps. Like, look, this is bodybuilding. It's not like if you can't work the target muscle, it kind of defeats the purpose. So wear your straps. It's fine. It's not, it's only going to help you. Now, if you have just terribly weak forearms or some kind of grip issue or something that you want to work directly, that's fine. That's not, there's nothing wrong with that, but you shouldn't, if you're impeding primarily, your rowing movements, I mean, that's mainly, or your pulling movements. If those things are impeded by grip strength, then wear some straps. Yeah. I just don't like, there's nothing wrong with, and then lots of people use the actual straps, like the cloth or whatever material it is. That's fine. The only thing that I don't like about them is that if I wrap them around, they get bulky in my hand.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, and so they kind of move around. Now, a lot of people, when they use them, if you want to use the cheaper strap like that, that's fine. You normally just won't want to wrap it all the way around. You just want to loop it 1 to 2 times and let the rest kind of hang off to the side or whatever. So that would be the little tip there. If you're going to use those, you don't want to move around your hand. But the VersaGrip just eliminates all that, and the strap itself is like a leather material, and it grips really well, and they last a long time. And I mean, I don't really see any faults with them. I like using them. They're super easy to use. I know I've gotten lifts where, like doing a rack pull or something, where my grip has just gone, and I'm able to get 3 or 4 extra reps hanging on by like 2 fingers.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
Because, so to me, that adds up. That's going to add up eventually. Just keep if you have a good strap like that. So I think they're worth the money. But yeah, I mean, and when to use straps or grips is pretty self-explanatory. Just, you don't have to be the moron that's wearing them when they bench press. Just please don't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should be relatively self-explanatory as to when you should wear them and when you should not. So yeah, I think that's more or less it on the straps. Like I said, the cloth ones or the cotton ones or whatever material they are, they're fine. If you want to save a little bit of money on them, just don't wrap them all the way around. Let the little tail hang off, and you should be good.
A note I will say on that one too, because I've seen this before, is make sure that they are they're both the same way in your hand, because when you slide them through kind of where they loop around there's like they has to look the same in both hands, so they should be like mirror opposites of each other. Because I've seen people where they'll put, like, if it slides in through your thumb, and that's where it should go. The material should be sliding in through like your thumb and your index finger, not out towards your pinky there, because that will almost kind of prematurely turn your wrist outwards when you're lifting. So that's a really easy thing to watch there too. And not to hack down Grizzly, because actually I like their weightlifting belts, but I had a pair of, I'll call them Grizzly grips, back before I could find a pair of Versa grips, and I had them rip on me mid deadlift, and I'm not a strong guy, so I was just thinking, holy crow, because these were made of neoprene, and what a terrible, terrible material to put on a firm knurling on a bar is neoprene. So yeah, I had, I think, not even 2.5, maybe 3 plates on a deadlift, and I remember deadlifting, and pow, it just slipped out of my left hand, and I put it down, and I was like, well, and I maybe had them for 6 months, Austin, so I don't know if they've improved their make or material that they've been using on them, but that's, like I said, I do like Grizzly, but I would not recommend their Grizzly version of Versa grips.
As a side note, just, I don't know why it popped in my head, but have you ever used, and this is primarily a powerlifting thing, but have you ever been able to use an actual deadlift bar?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, they're awesome. I bought one. I've used them before, but I actually have one now in my barn gym.
In the barn gym, yep.
Yeah, so any type of like rack pulls or deadlifts I use for that. That's also another thing with grip, that if you're in a gym that has one of those available, typically an actual deadlift bar, whether it's like Rogue or West Side or whatever, there's Texas deadlift bars, Ohio bars, there's a bunch of different ones. They normally have a small diameter.
Yes.
They'll have a smaller diameter, and the knurling on them is normally pretty gnarly. So you can definitely grip those a lot more effectively. And then, of course, they have the whip in them. They have more bar whip, which is part of the point. But they normally are noticeably smaller in your hand, which helps.
Yep.
So you can always use those. That's not necessarily something you're going to carry around in your gym bag, but just as a side note.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so since we're at the hand level, what about wrist wraps?
Sure. So wrist wraps, same thing. You know what? Funny enough, so I will hack on Grizzly again. I'm going to get an email here from Grizzly saying, "Hey, stop shitting on our products here." But I had Grizzly wraps, and they were, I don't know why they were made of whatever heckin' material it was, but it was just such cheap material, and it never really kept my wrist straight. It wasn't made of pretty firm material, so I had those for a bit, and I didn't really find it was doing much. I ended up, buying, I think it was Gaspari's brand of wraps there for a bit, the orange and black ones, and I found that those were really damn good there too. But a note on those are, do you need them? No, but if you have a special situation like mine, I found that there was some validity to them, and you'll see. I don't think I've seen a competitive power lifter without wrist wraps. So there's got to be a reason why all these guys are wearing, the guys and girls are wearing them, because it will save you, and it won't cause that bar to snap back in your hands or go the wrong way, because it's just something you don't need happening. But you have to think, these are people that are going for one astronomically heavy rep that usually is going to be taking a lot longer or slower to do the rep. Not saying I haven't seen powerlifters come in, lower the bar, and touch their chest and bang it back up like no one's business. But yeah, it does have some validity to it if you have any kind of, like for me, like I said, for my wrist issue there. But and it should be, if anything too, I will say that I see them worn a little bit too high up, aka towards their elbow, which now you're actually limiting the the point of them. It's like wearing an elbow brace on your forearm. It's not doing what it should do. So I would say, yeah, put them a little bit more, slide them a little bit more towards your hand itself, and not have it on your forearm. But yeah, and then having them astronomically tight too can be a pretty bad idea too, because then again that could be cutting the circulation off to your hand. You might lose blood in your hand, especially for something like a bench press or a shoulder press where your hand is over your head, or in a straight, and then the blood's obviously not being pumped up to your hand as quickly as it would be as your hand by your side. So that's I have never had that happen to myself, but I've read about it at places. So yeah, have it tight, like snug, but I wouldn't have it so tight that you can't friggin' feel your fingers at all. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you do want that hard. That was, I know powerlifters will use that thumbless grip sometimes, which I will firmly say I don't recommend the thumbless grip, just for reasons of wrist integrity and other reasons. And it's just scary for me. I don't know. Maybe it's a thing inside my head. Maybe on the Smith it could be fine, but either way, I still use the thumb around grip. Maybe that's just me. Depends upon the person and what they're comfortable with too. But I like wrist wraps. Just my thoughts are, I don't feel they're necessary unless you are in a position where you either A, might hurt yourself, or B, you do have a pre-existing injury. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wear them. They just really don't need to, I guess, just with the poundages. With the poundages that they're using, it's just not necessary, But you mentioned tightness too. Yeah, I mean, if you're in a powerlifting scenario where you're actually doing your, a max weight with a single rep, yeah, I mean, they're going to wrap knee wraps, wrist wraps, all that shit's going to be tight, very tight for one rep, and then you're taking it off. Not necessarily what we have to have in terms of us as bodybuilders. Now, you still want them snug, but you don't want your hand to fall off the bar when you're, like at rep 6, because it has no feeling left in it. Right. So yeah, don't do that. But coming from someone, I've actually had 2 wrist surgeries on my right wrist for ligament repairs, and I use them now. Not that my wrist integrity is compromised, because a lot of people, if you're familiar with orthopedics nowadays, I mean, a lot of the times your repaired joints are actually stronger than your
Yep.
Yeah. So not that I have to have it for that regard, but for peace of mind, I definitely wear them, and I do like them on heavier pressing movements. And I invested in some of the pretty heavy duty Enzer wraps.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And there's a huge difference. So if you do want a firm wrap and you want something that's actually going to support your wrist, I would definitely invest in something like the Enzer wraps, or maybe Mark Bell's Slingshot brand.
Sure. Yeah. I like Slingshot a lot. Yep.
Yeah. Stuff like that. I mean, there's a clear difference in the stiffness of the material and the density of the actual material that goes around your wrists. And a lot of the time too, you'll get a lot of the better, I guess, quote unquote, better brands. The wrap will be a little bit longer, so it wraps around your wrists more. Like you actually get more rotations around your wrists. So it's a little bit bulkier on your wrist, but again, it's providing more support. So yeah, there is a difference in quality when it comes to wraps like that. And that would probably be, that'd probably be my take on that. I mean, like I said, I use them once I get to a certain weight when I'm pressing and stuff. And it does, again, though, it's one of those things, it makes you more confident with the weight in your hand.
Yes.
And the thing is, like, again, we're talking about bodybuilding here and feeling of a target muscle working and moving a weight. If your grip's impeded, like we talked about using straps, and you can't get your full potential on the lift, well, then you're missing out on the point of training that muscle. Same thing with your wrists. If you feel unsteady with the dumbbell in your hand or whatever, and you can supplement that with a good quality wrist wrap, and now you've just completed extra reps, you're going to get a benefit from that. So again, it's not like not like you're being a wuss because you're wearing straps or wraps. It's just, if it makes your lifts better, then I don't see why not.
Yep.
So
I agree.
Yep. Cool. So let's see. We're on the arms. How about elbow sleeves?
Yep. Go for it. I've actually never worn them myself, so you can take that one first for sure.
All right. So I do have a pair of the Iron Rebel elbow sleeves.
Oh yeah, I know that company. Yep.
And I've used. Full disclosure, I haven't been someone that's used tons of elbow sleeves in the past. Like there's all different lengths and materials, and some people will actually go as far as to use knee wraps on their elbows, like to wrap them up, And here's the thing. A lot of people are using elbow sleeves because they have elbow pain.
Exactly.
And there's a big problem in that right off the bat, is the fact that you don't know why you have elbow pain. So, obviously try to figure out where's the elbow pain derived from in the first place. And the thing with a lot of these elbow pain, like elbow pain, for example, is it probably didn't originate in the elbow. There's probably some kind of downstream imbalance, whether it's your shoulders, your shoulders anterior rotated, or, you have tight, like your pec minors tight and your shoulders are rolled forward. And so your elbow path, like your bar path is off or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of little things upstream on your arm and in your shoulders, even in your scapulas, that'll cause that elbow pain. Mm-hmm. So, and it can be something as simple as you go to a good massage therapist or ART, someone that does ART, and once they start digging into you, they'll be able to tell you, hey, this spot's really tight. Your pec minor is very tight. You are rotated forward. You need to work on that. Okay, so that tells me we need to pull my posture back. So you probably have a weak rear delt or a weak rhomboid, or your lats are weak or something because you're not standing upright, or you sit at your computer all day. You know what I mean? So you are slouching or whatever. So again, try to figure out, at least get some sense of why that's happening. But I do like, I'll be honest, I do like the Iron Rebel sleeves, and I like them because they're kind of a minimalist type of sleeve. They're not like huge on my arms.
Okay.
And I think that's why a lot of the bodybuilders use them, because they're using them it's not a one rep thing. We're using them for sets. It's something that we can wear like throughout the workout. And it's not like, I don't feel like we're wearing like a water wing on our arm, like we're going to the swimming pool as a little kid. And the water wings.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So those are pretty nice. They only go down slightly on the forearm and then slightly up on the bicep, and they have like a little bit of elasticity to them. And the elasticity also helps take off a little bit of pressure in the areas that the lifts tend to hurt the elbows.
Yes.
So that helps. That's essentially what benefit you're getting from them. There are some heavier duty ones. Like, again, I think Mark Bell's Slingshot brand, I believe they have a pretty
Definitely do. Yep.
Now, some of those, here's the difference, is some of those sleeves are going to start just aiding in the actual lift. Like they're going to help. They're going to start adding weight to the lift, which really, for us as bodybuilders, unless your ego is just so big that you need to do that, then that's not really our purpose.
So I shouldn't be ordering those today after the podcast then? Okay, got it.
I mean, we want to get stronger, of course, but that's not, we don't have to buy special elbow sleeves to do it. But yeah, if you want to use them, because they keep the elbows warm and they keep blood in the joint, just like knee sleeves, which we can talk about too. You keep blood in that area. It is going to stay warm. It's going to feel good. The lifts just feel more comfortable. It feels more stable. Your joints feel good. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's fine. But again, my caveat there, it's the same caveat as wearing the raised heel shoe. If you have something that's causing pain, then, treat it at the source as well. Sure. Don't just, try not to just mask it with a piece of like some gym accessory.
Sure. The only thing that I'll add to that is the other common, especially from coaching so many predominantly women, is with the elbow pain is I find like I don't know what it is about women, and I've half jokingly, mostly jokingly, really jokingly made fun of my girls, is that they always seem to death grip the living crap out of the dumbbell, the bar, the machine, especially on something like a tricep push down or a back movement, is that they just death grip it, is what I call it. So they're squeezing the living crap out of these handles. So especially on the tricep push down, that's one of the most classic ones, is between the tricep push down or especially the overhead dumbbell extension. That's when people, especially to my knowledge, will say they feel that they have elbow pain. I'm like, okay, are you squeezing the bar or the dumbbell? And then they go, well, yeah. Or they'll say, I don't know, we'll pay attention next time. And they go and they find out that they are. And they say, well, you do realize now you're putting a lot of extra stress on the forearm muscles to hold on to the bar that doesn't necessarily need to be there. And like the analogy I use is that when you're doing a push-up, you don't need to squeeze the crap out of the grass or the floor to be able to do the push-up. Like, it's just you're activating muscles that literally have no point in being done with that movement. So, and then you're kind of pulling one way on the elbow and then kind of pulling the other way on the elbow, especially when you're doing triceps or a push-up, especially if it's a close grip or a diamond grip push-up. And that can cause too much excessive tension on the joints and the ligaments there and the tendons. So that's just something you can just really easily watch out for. And then going back to like the wrist wraps, is that I've seen it in guys too, but especially predominantly in girls, is that make sure your wrists are straight when you're pushing this stuff, especially for like the bar stuff. Like, let's go with the straight bar tricep push down, is get that bar that's close towards the meat or the butt of your hand where it meets your wrist, not towards your fingers, and push from there. Because now if you'll see people too, I know you've seen this, Austin, where people will do like bicep curls or especially cable curls where they're almost doing like a wrist curl at the end to like come pull it up, right?
Oh yeah.
And so then they'll start complaining about either wrist problems or elbow problems. I'm like, well, are you doing this wacky under tension wrist curl that's not only not needed, but not going to be helping out in your building your bicep or your tricep anyway? So those are just some little tiny things. And like, so just to echo exactly what you said, that's not a time to be putting an elbow wrap or a wrist wrap on. It's just because your technique's off. So that's the only thing that came to my brain to add in there. But everything else, I agree with you on that. Other than, and this we should pick knee wraps then next, just because we're on the wrap topic. But how you wrap your wrap is very, very instrumental to this too. Because I've seen people, especially like as soon as you said, using leg wraps on their elbows. If you don't wrap it in a correct fashion, it will pull. It's effectively trying to pull your joint or your movement bar path to the wrong part. Especially with knee wraps, especially when you're getting up into these really heavy poundages. I know I was shown by my massage guy, Daryl in town there, because he was not only I'll call him a power bodybuilder or a power builder, because he got up to astronomically heavy weights, and this would have been in the late 80s, early 90s, and he was telling me that he would see some guys just wrapping their knees, and it would be basically pulling their knees in, right? Which is exactly what you don't want on something like a heavy squat or a heavy deadlift, because that's just now you're creating the wrong angle. You're not joint stacking is what it's called correctly, and that's just a dangerous way to be setting things up too. So like obviously over the podcast, I don't really think I would be able to give a accurate explanation on how to wrap correctly, but there are some damn good videos out there. Maybe I'll find one or two, or even do a wrapping my knees myself here and put it up in a YouTube or something like that. But yeah, that's just be precaution on that too, especially if you are going to wrap correctly. Just like wearing a wrist wrap, just like wearing VersaGrips, like wearing the straps, make sure you're using them correctly and they're not actually going to be making your lift even worse. So yeah. So then for knee wraps, I would say like controversial is not really the right word, but definitely debated would be it, is that people, there's the camp of you don't need knee wraps at all, and then there's the camp of people saying I won't lift without knee wraps because I'll either get knee pain or something else. And so I'll just really quickly say exactly what Austin said about the other ones, is just make sure that you know why you're wrapping your knees. You're not just wrapping your knees because you have knee pain. Get to the source of the pain, figure that out. Probably massage maybe in the quads, maybe massage in the calves, maybe something's going on there. Figure that out first, okay? And then you want to use knee wraps after that. Same thing. Don't cheap out on knee wraps. I will say I do know that there is two pretty distinct forms of wraps in terms of we'll call them the powerlifting wrap, and then we'll call them the bodybuilding wrap. Is that the short way, where it's only just like the thickness, not the length of the wrap. For a powerlifting wrap and a bodybuilding wrap, they're generally around the same tightness where the weave is. Like you really can't pull apart laterally a wrap very easily. They're usually pretty darn interwoven, interlocked in the same stitching method, the same way, same elasticity. Now, during the lengthways where you would actually be, you know, unrolling the wrap and wrapping around, a bodybuilding wrap will have a little bit more give to it there than a powerlifting wrap. Now, a powerlifting wrap is almost the same tautness or tension wise when you pull it apart, because what was it for? A powerlifting wrap for the most part is meant to do extremely minimal extremely minimal reps, if not just one rep, period. Like that's it. Like you have to take a look at the sport there. What's bodybuilding? It's a multi-rep endeavor, we'll call it, whereas powerlifting is a one rep endeavor for the most part. So you really, because they were selling, I forget which brand this was, but they were selling we'll call them the powerlifting wraps, and you clearly said right on there powerlifting, but people would buy them because they thought it was for just, it would be tighter, or because it was more durable, whatever, which of course it's probably true, especially something like that's from that metal company, or I think Inzer maybe makes metal, probably around those lines, or that's the form of them anyway. But when you're doing this multi-rep stuff, you do want to have a little bit of give, especially with something like a leg press where you're coming down. You do want it to give so that you can your quad can sink in, your calf can sink in there, because if not, that could actually cause a little bit too many problems. So I remember Daryl, my massage, like I know I talk about him probably quite a bit here on the podcast, but I call him one of the bodybuilding gods, because he just, you know, so much about joint integrity and muscle integrity. So I took everything that he kind of said and looked it up, and there was a lot of validity there, and I wish I had known that to tell more people back in the day. So, but yeah, and then, you know, not picking something that's really loose on the lengthways and really loose on we'll call it the thickness ways, or the girth ways. You just don't want that. That's too much give. And now that's pretty much you're now wrapping your knees with like a cotton shirt, which I just wouldn't recommend doing whatsoever. But yeah, there is some, like, I know, like anchoring above the quad, then anchoring below the quad, like on the calf is like kind of the best way. And then kind of like just making sure that your kneecap isn't moving around. That should be predominantly the reason why, if you're gonna knee wrap, there it is. You're not trying to, and then of course, like Austin mentioned with the elbows, keeping it warm, keeping the joint warm, especially if you're in a damn cold gym. They don't want to pay for heat in the middle of the winter or something like that, which that was one of my gyms for years. That's a really good point there too. If you look at any of Dorian Yates stuff, even when it was warm as hell, he would always have a big sweater. He would always have his elbow wraps. I think at one point he not necessarily shoulder wraps, but he always had like a lot of clothing on there to keep the body warm, because that's the whole point, right? Is you want the joints to have the integrity there, that they're not stiff and creaky. But yeah, for knee wraps, I used them for a bit, and I used them wrong. I'll flat out say this is back when I had knee pain, and it was literally coming from my quads. I had lots of knots and everything else going on in my quads, and my hips were a little bit out, and I would wear knee wraps, and that was wrong. I don't know if I actually felt like I was getting knee pain going away or alleviated when I was using knee wraps, but now I don't use them, and I haven't used them in 5, 6, 7 years now. So, but yeah, that's my kind of take on them. I'll let you say you're definitely more info about it on there.
Yeah. So I probably fall into the camp most commonly of not using them. And I just feel like, for a couple reasons. For one, people use them wrong, as you mentioned. And secondly, if you wrap them wrong, especially if you're applying pressure to your kneecap the wrong way, like there is some downsides to that shearing force in your patella tendon and the cartilage behind your knee. And this is just information that's been relayed to me from a couple people that I trust, in terms of that not being good for the actual joint integrity long term. It feels good when you do it, and it also is creating some of that rebound out of the bottom, of course. And then from a powerlifting aspect, they are wrapping them super tight, and you are going to get some some extra poundage on your lift. I mean, there's a reason that if you look at powerlifting records, there is a wrap and there's one without a wrap. There's a reason.
I think for the like they also call it like raw, like that would be like what you're like. I think like not to hijack it, but I think raw is like you're allowed like wrist wraps and a belt. I think that's it. You're not allowed a suit. You're not allowed like any of these other special things that can aid to the exactly. Because if you take a look at the raw records versus the non-raw or like I don't know what the heck they call it, but like yeah, the poundages there are fairly freaking different, right?
Well, and they even have now some federations where in the raw that you can only use knee sleeves, or
that's
some of them were
okay.
Other ones where it's quote unquote raw, but you can use knee wraps.
Okay, and sure. And that's going to make a difference, right? That's what we're saying here.
Exactly. The actual wrap itself will certainly add. You know what? If people want, you can actually jump on PubMed if you're someone that likes studies. They have studies on there using knee wraps, and I think it's something like 5 to 10% difference in weight in some cases, which 10% that's significant. That's quite a bit. So again, I'm just not a big fan because almost always people are using them because they have knee pain and they have not addressed the knee pain as to what the source is. And they also, then they don't wrap them right, and their patellar tendon tracking is wrong.
Yep.
So they're just creating this shearing force underneath their kneecap that they can't feel when they're lifting for a couple reasons. Because one, their joint is warm, and secondly, their endorphins are going and all this shit, so they're not really feeling it. But over time, it's creating an issue. So again, just back to, like I said, with everything else, definitely make sure that you are figuring out where the problem is. You said it beautifully when you talk about the raised heel shoe. If you're placing all the pressure on the ball of your foot when you're doing a squat or even a leg press, for example,
absolutely,
your knee's going to hurt. I mean, I've worked with people because I don't do a lot of one-on-one training, but if somebody like a client comes out and trains and they squat, two things if they have poor quad or just more leg activation in general, and they have knee pain at the same time, it's almost always because they don't apply the pressure correctly to the correct part of their foot when they squat. Once I start having them move, sit back a little bit or apply a little more pressure to the back of their foot, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be like directly on the heel, but at least keeping the foot flat, it makes a huge difference. Now all of a sudden their quads are firing, their hamstrings are firing, the glutes are firing, all this stuff's firing, and all that, all that's taken off the knee. Because at the end of the day, and I believe we probably said it on this podcast, is that the joint does not move itself. The muscle moves the joint. So if you have really good muscle activation, you're going to have a lot less joint pain. Just because the muscle is now, the muscle is taking the blunt of everything. It's moving correctly. It's tracking. You're probably more likely to track correctly through your range of motion. So again, just figure out what the problem is. And if you are going to use wraps, make sure you wrap correctly. And then knee sleeves, I don't know if you touched on, I don't think you said anything about.
No, I didn't say. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so for the sleeves, that's a good alternative. The sleeves, some of them, you can get some of the pretty tight sleeves that might add a little bit of rebound out of the bottom if that's something that you want. But a lot of the time, the sleeves are just keeping everything snug and warm. And they aren't going to be so tight that they are causing your kneecap to move around in in a poor position. Like I said, that's going to create that shearing force.
Yeah.
So you won't have to worry about that. I would say probably lean towards sleeves for a lot of people. And if you want to use them, if you want to use something, but I can tell you, like, honestly, this might not be the best example, but I've had ACL and meniscus repair on my right knee, and I had a partial tear of my LCL in my left knee, completely unrelated to bodybuilding. And I squat pretty heavy with like no, I mean, I'll get like occasional just like achy in the knee here and there, but that's more of like an overuse issue. Just if I'm just a little worn down and inflamed, it's not like I don't get pain. I don't get pain while I train. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I have torn meniscus in both of my knees right now. Cartilage is torn. Yeah. And I haven't, and literally my doctor's like, don't repair it because all they're going to do is take it out and you'll just get arthritis. So it's like, he's like, just make sure that your quads are really strong. Make sure that like the VMO of your quads very strong. If your hamstrings are strong and your glutes are strong and your form is good, that muscle is going to do the work and your joints will be fine.
That's right.
And I'll tell you what, up to this point, knock on wood, it has translated that way. So just work on your activation. That's what I would say.
Perfect. Yep. I like it a lot. Yeah. Boils down to something as simple as make sure you're warmed up correctly, right? Like jumping into an exercise, doing a couple sets of leg press and then jumping into a really heavy leg press. That's not it. You know what I mean? We should be doing a little bit more than that. And like, I love that you said that too. That's the only other thing I'll say is with a knee wrap is that because of the endorphins, because of the adrenaline and things, that you won't necessarily feel that pain, but now the next day you'll wake up with that pain. It could be that shearing force. Cause I remember at one point I felt like I used the analogy of machetes, felt like they were being stabbed into my patellar tendon every time I went upstairs or downstairs. And I said, okay, something is horribly wrong, that my knee wraps are not working. And that's when I finally went into Daryl and had lots and lots of hours of massage on both my left and right quad, and that was what was doing all the pulling. It had nothing, just like you and your doctor alluded to there. So it's got, as long as your quads are strong and your technique's good and they're firing correctly, that's going to save your joints and save it. So that's I couldn't agree with you more there. Is that like, but yeah, because I would never really feel that knee pain during something like a leg press, especially. But then the next day I would be feeling, or even then if I train in the mid-afternoon, I'd start feeling it at nighttime, and that's just when you know that definitely they're either you're wrapping wrong or the wraps are not what's helping you out at all, really.
Yep, I would agree. I think probably the only heavy hitter that we really missed was a belt, so we could touch on that real quick.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So what's your take? What's your take on using them? I know that you like to use them when you do bicep curls. You told me.
So I find I can't get past the 15-pound dumbbells unless I'm wearing my belt. You know what I mean? So
you have to have an abdominal bracing to do a proper bicep.
I've got it, or else I just lean too far forward and it turns into a spider curl. And now what am I doing in there? Right? Yeah, exactly. So I've I definitely have some things to say on belts. Is that I really don't like the Velcro ones. I just don't. The ones that you kind of put around and you pull them over with and then the Velcro will grip on there. I've seen them break too much. I've seen them come unraveled too much mid set or whatever. Not that people can't use them. I know Chic has a higher quality one, and some people really like it. I think at one point Jay Cutler was using one, and you know what, Jay Cutler's Jay Cutler. So, and I don't think he would be using it in his weight DVDs if he wasn't actually using it, but hey, I just find that they're a little bit too unreliable versus like a nice leather belt. You kind of see two standard versions of the weightlifting belts, which are the ones that have the contour around the hips and the ones that don't. I should say three, and then there's ones that have these little bubble not gel, but there'd be something they like puff out on the lower back. They actually are raised up and puffed into I don't even know what the hell these are there for. If they're meant to give you some kind of comfort added into your belt or whatever, I'm only gonna stay away from those. Those are completely pointless in my opinion. They're not only will they shift around over the course of time, but it's actually trying to baby your lower back in a way that you don't want. Just stay away from them. We want to make sure that the thickness of the belt is the same the entire way around in terms of the lengthways. So the two big distinguishing things, and you can jump on me if I'm wrong on this one, is that the ones that are the same thickness in terms of the width all the way around, those are more for powerlifting. They're also probably thicker through the girth as well. And then the ones that have the kind of the contour around them for over the hips, those are more, we'll call them bodybuilding belts, and they're meant for higher, and they're not exactly stabilizing the hips as much as the powerlifting belt would do, the one that's thickness the whole the same way around. I've used both with quite extensive quite extensive lengths of time, and I found that as soon as I was getting up to the higher rep ranges of bodybuilding or lifts or whatever, anything over 10 really was, I felt I started, like, my hips just didn't feel right with having the thicker one, where I was taught to have half of my hip on the belt and half of my hip not on the belt. If it was actually trying to hold my hips in place like I would for a powerlifting lift or something like that. Whereas then the bodybuilding ones actually have that like cutout, like you about halfway or 3/4, 2/3 of the way around, you'll see it will dip back in. It will actually be not quite as thick throughout the lift, kind of where you start putting the belt into where you would clasp it. And that's the one that I use now. I have 2 of them. Depends upon how fat I get in the off season. And I like those better because that's more for me, is that's where I find I can brace with my abs. I can either do a little bit of the Valsalva maneuver and push against my belt, and it will protect my lower back. That should be the entire point of these belts, in my opinion. I will use them for squats. I will use them for deadlifts. I will definitely use them for any kind of standing overhead press. I'm not a very wide hip dude. I'm pretty narrow hipped. Even at my absolute fattest when I wasn't lifting, I think I got up to a 36, 38 inch waist, which was huge for me. And I usually sit without dieting or getting down. I'm usually around that 32 inch, and I've dipped into 28, 29 at my thinnest, which is fairly friggin' thin. So whenever I'm standing up, I feel a little bit too much torsion or tension on my lower back doing a standing lift. I just don't want to have the potential to be there. So I'll be able to use my abs against the belt to keep myself more straight up and down doing a shoulder press or anything else. And that's the point, is that you want the belt tight enough so that it's actually frigging doing something. It's not just an accessory. It's not like people that will wear like a belt around their jeans just to wear like a belt buckle, and it won't even have any efficacy. The pants will still be falling down. Well, now the utility of the belt is all but gone, and it's now just a fashion accessory, which is exactly why Austin's clowning me about my love of doing it with my using it with my arms, because now there's no utility to the belt. It's just a fashion statement, or I don't even know what the heck it is. If they think it's doing, some people may think it's doing something. I don't know, but it's pointless then. But because I was told too, especially from powerlifting standpoints, is that you wear your belt, and then almost in between the powerful sets is that you take the belt off, is because it's so frigging tight that it should be damn uncomfortable to wear around the gym at all. Like sitting down with it, standing up with it, it should be that tight that it's actually serving a purpose. It's keeping everything nice and nice and compact, that your lower back isn't gonna freak out on you or anything like this. That's the entire point of it. So just like anything, just like the shoes, just like the wraps, just like the straps, what's your point? Why are you wearing these? What are you trying to do with it? And it's one of those things too where it does not help build. And I've seen, maybe you can argue with me on this too. But I would say it does not help to build the abs or the lower back. I don't know if I've seen actual evidence to the contrary, but I've seen anecdotal people say that they feel that it's still training their abs or lower back, which I don't really feel it is. I think you should be doing direct ab and lower back work. Just period. That's just one of my training philosophies anyways. Won't get into that too much. But yeah, that's where the validity of the belt comes into play. And everyone always asks, and I mean this, everyone, should I wear a weightlifting belt, Marty? Do I need a weightlifting belt, Marty? And I'll say no, you really don't. And people will think that it will keep the waist nice and tight, or that deadlifting will thicken your waist or whatever, which I've seen many girls and boys that don't wear weightlifting belts that do not get this, and they deadlift and squat heavy and they do not get this thickened trunk. There's other reasons why the trunk and the abs can get thicker like that. Could be digestion, could be actual hypertrophy of the rectus abdominis and other things. But again, that's out of the scope of this podcast for now. But that's the whole point. It's for the safety of the lower back. Make sure that you're wearing it correctly. There's plenty of good videos out there too, or you can ask one of us to say, hey, am I wearing my belt correctly? And we'll let you know if it's too high or if it's too low. But you'll know. You'll know, because it will feel pretty damn crappy. Let's say if you wear your belt incorrectly for a squat and you squat down and it's not on there right, it will either pinch you or it will impede your depth or something along those lines, and that's just not where you want to go. Or I've seen this too, where people will wear it too loose, and like now it actually is moving around vertically on them, and that's the last thing. Now your belt is definitely not doing anything, and if anything, it's going to get caught on something and potentially mess something up. So, but do you need one? No. And just like we talked about, especially with the, I usually like to have this one akin with the wrist wraps. Is that if it feels good and it gives you a peace of mind, and now you think, okay, you can get underneath a whatever squat and get ready to pull a whatever deadlift in terms of weight, and it's making you feel more confident and feel more ready, go for it. Absolutely. I don't think it's a crutch. I don't think it's going to be allowing you to lift more weight than what you would, like we talked about, the 5 to 10% more with the knee wraps. It's just now not letting your abs or lower back fail you to complete that lift, which that's fine. That's that's exactly just like wrist straps, is that if you want to be He-Man and someone, or She-Ra, and someone told you that you shouldn't be wearing these apparatuses because it's cheating, or it's taking away from building lower back and ab stuff. It's like, well, then do lower back and ab stuff at another time. That's more than fine. You can get other training in, but to take away that peace of mind or that safety, no, it's definitely worth it to wear a belt. And I definitely wear a belt on the big lifts, and then arms as well, obviously. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I usually wear mine when I train calves, but that's...
Yeah, well, it gotta be come on now, especially seated calves.
Different story. That's why my calves are... That's probably why my calves are terrible. Anyhow, yeah, you pretty much covered everything on it. I actually have both of the... I'm not even sure what the proper term is, but I have one of the belts that contours in the front to the thinner front strap.
Yep. That's one. Yep. You got
it. It's the one that has the traditional like buckle on it. And then I have another one that is like the thicker that goes all the way around. I got actually both of them were free. They were both, one was gifted to me. It's like the Cardillo style. It's really nice.
That's my company, man. I love Cardillo belts. Yep.
And then the other one, the thicker one, I'm not actually sure what the company is, but it's the thicker, like I said, the thicker style belt, and I'll wear them on different lifts. But yeah, if you have, I'm going to kind of reference back to everything. If you have a very weak core and you are using it as a crutch because you have no abdominal bracing because your core is just very weak, work on that, and make sure that you're doing something to actually work on your core and you're not just using it, because that's what a belt is. It's a bracing mechanism. You brace your core against the belt. That's why it helps with stability on the lifts. So I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with them, but like I tend to personally, like I'll use mine. I'll go without mine. I'm sorry, all the way up to a certain point, because yes. I do want my core to have to work at, some. So on my warm up sets or my work up sets or whatever, I'll go without it till I get to a pretty heavy weight. So my core is having to brace on its own.
Yep.
But yeah, I think you pretty much covered everything. The only thing I really don't like is I hate the damn lever belts. And that's only because as bodybuilders, the size of your weight goes up and down from prep to off season. They're just a pain in the ass to adjust. And frankly too, waist size. Another thing with the waist size too is that your lower back grows. So if you're a big guy, like the bigger you get, your waist is probably going to go up because your freaking lower back got bigger.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean it's hilarious. We'll kind of close it off with this, but there was just kind of a funny thread I saw about people lying about their waist size, like these super heavyweights saying they have 28-inch waist. I'm like, no, you had an actual 28-inch waist. Either your hips are tiny, or your lower back development is just god awful.
And I'll tell you, when I was 28 inches, like that was it. Like my lower back development was junk, and I have little hips, so that was both. Yeah.
I have a relatively small hip. I have a relatively small hip girdle, and I don't have like a blown out waist or anything. And even mine is probably like a 32.
Yep.
And that's just because my low back's gotten twice as big as it was when I weighed 150 pounds.
Yep.
So Yeah, I don't really have much else to add. If there's anything else you guys want us to cover equipment wise, I mean, there's all kinds of little accessories. You could just let us know. Maybe we'll throw it in the next Q&A episode. Or
We could do that, like even like a half part 2 and just blow through some ones there quickly, because I have a couple ideas of ones. But no, I think this was much better that we just had like you said, the heavy hitters out of the way there of what you see mostly floating around the gym and what's in people's gym bags for sure.
Cool, man. Sounds good.
All right then, everybody. From Marty and Austin here at the Mind Body Broadcast, we'll catch you next time.